Good evening everybody, we are back with a brand new video, and today we are going to be going through 5 tips that pro builders use in order to make their houses just look much better in The Sims. To demonstrate these, I'm going to be building a kitchen, and we're just going to do sort of like each tip, and then each tip I'm going to show you how I would implement it in my own builds. So the very first thing that I tend to do, and which is going to be tip number 1, is actually use online sources in order to get a reference for what we're building. A great site to use is one I'm sure that you've heard of before, which is Pinterest. Now, there is a few catches to using Pinterest in order to come up with designs. You've got to bear in mind that any designs that you see on here are very likely copyrighted, so you want to make sure that if you're picking designs for your build from here, you don't want to be just completely ripping them off. You want to make sure that you're changing the design as much as possible. What I tend to use is I will use it for the base shape for the build. For example, for our kitchen, I'm just going to be looking at the general where the windows are, where the like sort of countertops are and things, and then from there we can then take that, go into the Sims, and then basically just completely mix it. And I'm going to show you how I do that now. So when it comes to looking for a reference for something specific, you're going to want to make sure that you use enough tags that you can kind of find what you're looking for. I normally add the word reference in there just so that it normally gives you like slightly bigger like scenes, so that you have a better idea of the space that's actually being used in there. You can also do things such as searching blueprints, and that will also give you something similar where it's preemptively put where all the items in the room are, and that tends to be a quite good way of doing it as well. So for this, I've just typed in cottage kitchen reference, and obviously we've got quite a lot of sort of different references here. Obviously if you can't find what you're looking for, you can then change it, so I'm gonna change it to blueprint, and then I might also get rid of the cottage just because we can make it any style we want once we've got the basic shape down. So I quite like this one, which is actually a Shutterstock image. So what I'm then going to do is bring that up either in just the background so that I can go back into my browser to view it, or what I'm actually going to do is actually just put it on my iPad so that it's right next to me so I can look back at it when I'm actually making the room. Okay, so now we are back in the game, and I've got my reference to the side of me so that I know what I'm kind of looking at. If you don't have a spare thing, you could use maybe like your phone or something to look at the reference, or you can literally just have it on your browser and then use Alt-Tab in order to go over to your browser in order to look at the reference. But it is mostly easier just to have it right next to your computer. I look at a reference for pretty much all of my builds, even if it's just to get the basic skeleton for the building. I would definitely recommend doing this one, as this is sort of a bog standard. If you can then sort of take that design and then make it your own by putting in your own objects. You could be like, oh, I did kind of like where that one object is there and move it over here. There's loads of different ways that you can then personalize the sort of references that you have. You could also take multiple references and combine all of those, but just ensure that you're not just taking one design and then mimicking the exact thing into yours, because it's kind of like copying at that point, and honestly you won't find it as fun. There we go. So we've got now our basic shape, which is taken from the original design. I can then go ahead and add in our additional stuff that is going to make it look so much better. This leads us into tip number 2, which is going to be to never use base game items if you can help it. Now, I am not a fan of the base game stuff. There's a reason that it's in base game and that you don't have to pay to have these additional items. You don't even need to do that at all. If you don't want to buy the extra packs, that's absolutely fine. What you can do is actually just get mods. If you can't do mods as well, then unfortunately you can't do this tip, but it is very helpful to get anything that just basically looks different from the base game. The reason that I say this is primarily because if we have a look at some of the base game items, so for example these windows, we can see that the quality is just quite a bit off. The wood just doesn't match up in terms of, like, if you have a look at the white wood here and the white wood here, there's kind of like a hard grain on it, and it also just doesn't look as good. But if we replaced it with windows that did look a little bit nicer because they were from a pack, then it just overall elevates the entire thing. This cheat is especially important when it comes to doing the tiles on the top of your roof. I've noticed that a lot of people tend to just leave it as the basic one. Honestly, change it because it looks so much better just by picking anything else. So we've amended some of those now, and you can't forget the walls and the flooring, which I would definitely recommend using packs if you can. The only exception that I would really have to that is the sort of pure expressions or plain colored ones. The rest of them just aren't that good. Like some of the paneling and tile ones are just really, like, I would never use them. I am tempted to leave the walls white just because I think they do look quite good. I am going to change the flooring though. There is some really good sort of wooden floorings that I would definitely recommend using in a lot of these. You want to kind of match the colors as well for the rest of the room, so this one looks pretty good. I think I'm going to go with this one. Now, I don't have any mods downloaded, but obviously some people do have mods downloaded. I would definitely recommend adding some mods in. If you're thinking about making a certain style of kitchen, you might want to sort of look into like the Sims resource and mod the Sims, and obviously trying to find some stuff that relates to the kind of eras and what you are actually decorating. Moving on to our next tip, what I would definitely recommend doing is adding platforms. Now, obviously we're only making a kitchen at this point. I might just drag it out so that I can show you the difference that platforms can make in a build. So I'm going to make it slightly bigger, and this time we're going to be adding a dining table. So I'm going to drag the whole thing out. To be able to then add in a platform, what I would recommend is I'm going to section this whole thing off here. This is going to remove one of our lights, but it's fine. Grab this part and literally just press the arrow in order to raise it up. I'm going to do it twice, I think. Yeah. Then we're going to remove this wall here. You can then fiddle around if you want it to be slightly longer, for example. I'm going to drag it over a little bit just so that it is slightly longer. Actually, no, it looks, yeah, no, we'll leave it as it was. And then the idea that I've then got is that I'm going to use this area down here as a little dining area. So what I'm then going to basically do is just add in some little stairs. And of course, from our last tip, I would recommend, again, not really using base game 1 stairs. Don't matter as much just because you are kind of just going ahead and picking like bog standard stairs, so it doesn't matter too much. I would always recommend matching your stairs to your floor though. So I'm just trying to match the wood at the minute that we've picked. Then obviously you're going to want to choose your platform type as well. So I'm just going to pick one that again matches the flooring that I've already picked. This isn't a necessity. If you really wanted to, you could go with something like this where it's like brick and it's a little bit more exciting. Actually kind of like the brick look, so I think I'm going to go with that for now. Something that is tempting me as well is actually bringing in a second platform. Never be afraid to add in more. I think that they always look really good when you have like multiple anyway. So what I'm actually going to do is bring in a second one that brings us down to the other level underneath it. To do that, I'm then going to grab this and we're going to have more stairs. Think of it sort of just like as a little corner. Ideally, I would like this on a slightly taller one so that we had more steps, just because I think it looks a little bit funny only having one step. I'm then going to go in and obviously change that as well so that it's the same as before. Or you could change it up and make it a bit different. I think that having this one bit now, it does look a little bit strange, especially as we also have it going in here. So I think I'll just make that one. Go bear in mind as well that you don't actually need stairs if you're only going down one little step. So I might actually just remove that because it makes it a little bit easier. I might also change the rim so that it matches the brick that we have there a little bit better. There we go. And then we can add in our little dining table over here. If you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to like, share and subscribe. We go. So now that we've added in our platform, we can move on to our next tip. If you have a look at this build at the moment, it is looking pretty bare. There's this entire wall here that literally has nothing on it. So the next trick is going to be clutter, which is something I would definitely recommend doing. At the minute, this is looking quite nice because it's quite a modern build, but I absolutely love clutter and I try to include it in as many of my builds as possible just because it does really up the look of the overall build. What I would recommend doing for this is to actually turn on cheats that will allow you to move all your stuff around. To do that, type in Shift-Control-C. That's what you're going to want to hold those all at the same time. This little bar at the top will show up, and then you're going to type in bb.moveObjects-on. And then hit enter. Then you'll see move objects cheat is on appear on your screen. That will then allow you to basically move objects wherever you want them. They could literally go into things and wherever the heck you want them on your actual screen. It makes it much easier to do the next couple of tricks that I'm going to show you in order to make more clutter. So the first thing that I'm thinking is I want to move these and make them a little bit smaller because at the minute they're kind of taking up a lot of the screen and I don't really like that personally for my gameplay. So what I'm going to do is actually just pick it up. Then going to want to press the bracket key and this will make them slightly smaller. I am going to keep that one where it is. I'm going to do the same for the other two and I'm just going to basically put them all next to each other. This way they fit in a little bit better above this counter and they just look a little bit nicer to look at on screen. We are then going to have a think about what we want to do with this big old blank wall here because obviously we do want it quite cluttered. I'm thinking what I'm going to do is actually add a bunch of surfaces for us to put things on. So for this, I'd recommend going into the items by category. You can then go to surfaces, which will then allow you to see all of the different surfaces you have. Obviously, we could either have a look in here is normally what I'll do, or most of the time I will actually look in displays just because it does give you a lot more options for being able to put cluttered objects around. What could be cool is actually having this big old plant display. I kind of like that. I think that looks awesome. So I'm gonna include that one, which definitely fills out that wall quite a bit as well because it's quite tall. We do have this section here though. I want to make sure that I fill that with pictures. If you have a long section like this, I would recommend adding sort of like 3 separate pictures. This is easier to do again if you have packs, but I think there are a few that you can do if you don't. I would recommend either these ones because they come in a variety of different sort of base colors, and then you can kind of change it a little bit. So moving over to the actual kitchen, now this is the bit that might be a little bit difficult to actually add some clutter to, because you do need additional cheats in order to add maximum clutter to this table. Again, we can go off of our original reference that we had where there are a few items scattered around. I'm going to try and do my own kind of reference for this just because I think it'll look a little bit better. But basically what I tend to do is I'll always start by removing this corner that we have in the middle of the room, and then basically I tend to just add the same things in a lot of my builds just because I think it does look pretty good. We'll always add one plant, which start by adding it to one of the surfaces, grab it, and then hold Alt while it's still on the surface. You can then grab it and drag all the way over to wherever you want it. Try and picture kind of where it would be on the top. So I'm going to add it there, I think. Maybe drag it in a little bit more. There we go. And then obviously we're going to grab some other little kitchen bits. I tend to, again, go for the same one. So what I'll tend to go for is this sort of little towel dispenser thing that comes in Basegame. If you're struggling with it clipping to things, you can just move the camera a little bit in order to get to that little corner. So I'm going to pop it there. Then I'm also going to grab this one, which I, again, pretty much always use in my builds. And I'm going to just drag it and pop it next to the plant on the other side. Then when we then put this counter back, it's all on the counter wherever we wanted it. And it makes more sense than trying to actually clip it onto there because you get limited amount of space that you can actually put it on top of a surface. What I also like to do is try and find something that you could use as like a splash board behind here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find something that kind of works though. Let's have a look. So found this thing. This is kind of cool. I might use this just because it might give us a pretty good look for the room. So what I'm going to do is basically I want to raise it up so it's a little bit more in line. So if we have a look at where it is at the minute, where it's on the floor, it's too low down. I would like it to kind of reach that exhaust that we've got at the top. So what you're going to want to do is hold Alt and then press 9, and each time you press it, it's going to raise it up a little bit further. I'll tend to put it sort of where I'm kind of wanting it, and then I'll just raise it up till it reaches it. So that's kind of where I want it, and I think that looks pretty good as well. You got to be careful with doing that though, that it doesn't actually come through the other side. So let's have a look. We're good. So that's perfect. So that's looking pretty good. I do think it could do with a little bit more clutter. So moving on to our last tip is to use Debug. Now this is a bit of a difficult one. Honestly, like I find it a little bit difficult to use. So basically what you're going to want to do is press Shift-Control-C. Then you're going to want to type in bb.showHiddenObjects and then hit enter, and then you'll get a bunch of new items that are then shown in your inventory. If you go to the search bar and you type in debug, you'll see all of the new items that you then get given. You can then use these in order to decorate your kitchen a little bit better. You've got things like little bundles of seed, we've got a random little purse. So I'm now going to go ahead and just add in some additional items that are just going to make it feel much more lived in. Unfortunately, something else to remember with debug is that you can't copy it. So say if I put this glass down, I can't then use the select tool in order to copy it and make another one. So if you like an item, make sure that you put a lot down, or you might lose it again because there are a lot of debug items, unfortunately. Another thing to bear in mind is if you place a glass down, say if I put this cake down, it will just be a plate, and unfortunately the plate will also go dirty, so eventually it will be a bit gross, which does kind of suck because it'd be so cool to just fill a room full of cakes. Something you can do though is use ingredients. So we've got things like asparagus here, we've got some chicken, so find which one that you kind of want. I kind of like this one actually because I think it actually matches the colors of the room a little bit better. I'm going to just put it directly next to here so it looks like someone's cooking. We also have this one, which I kind of like this one as well because it's a bit more true to size, but the items do disappear. So if you want just a plain chopping board, then that would work for you too. We do have little bottles as well, which I'm just going to scatter around where I'm actually cooking. But we do have a little bag of groceries, which could be pretty good to just have on our countertop here. Maybe like they're unpacking after they've just got back from the store. We do have pumpkins as well, so if you wanted to include a pumpkin, you could, as well as an eggplant, which I am going to place there And on that note, we are finished with today's video. Those are all of the tips that I would recommend in order to make a place just look a little bit nicer and to really up your game in terms of building houses and just generally decorating. Let me know in the comments if there's any tips here that you haven't really heard before. Be sure to give this video a like as well if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't already. I post long videos like this every Wednesday and Friday at around 6 PM, and I also post shorts the rest of the week. If you enjoyed this video, on the screen is a recommended video, so check that one out too. And I hope you all have a great evening.